stakes are high. The mag breaks it down. No need to sigh. From EU rules to global news. Reg with Meg, your trusted views.
Welcome back to Reg with Meg, the podcast where we explore the latest developments and insights shaping the global medical device industry. I'm your host, Tiffany Brown, and in this episode, I'm joined by our regulatory consultant, Brittany Dunning, who has over 8 years of experience in regulatory affairs and has managed submissions across multiple markets like the US, the EU, the UK, Singapore, and Saudi Arabia. We're going to reflect on key sessions from RAPS Convergence and explore how regulatory professionals are uniquely positioned to bridge the gap between innovation and equity. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tiffany. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we're going to dive in. You went to a lot of sessions and we're going to get your key takeaways. So getting started, I see one of the sessions that you went to was about EU AI Act and medical device or medical AI compliance. What was your key takeaways from that?
So there were quite a few sessions at this conference that focused specifically on artificial intelligence. And I think some of the most impactful discussions centered around the EU AI Act and its implications for high-risk AI systems. Once the AI Act comes into full force, AI embedded within medical devices will need to comply with both the MDR or IVDR, as well as the EU AI Act. So this really marks a new era of oversight, particularly around data governance and cybersecurity requirements. One unexpected theme that came across in some sessions was how legacy systems are going to be handled. Many older AI models may be exempt from these new regulations unless significantly modified. But if they are updated, they're going to need to be retrained with compliant data. And this can be a big challenge for companies with limited access to the original data sets. I think one of the biggest key takeaways was that AI systems must be designed with human override capabilities and safe fallback states. So these AI systems need to incorporate built-in functions for monitoring, intervention, and safe state transitions. And the users also need specific training to recognize bias and override decisions safely. So manufacturers for these devices, appropriate risk management isn't optional. It's foundational for these technologies. And manufacturers need to ensure that they're managing risks across the life cycle. So starting from the design and development to the deployment and even decommissioning, as well as also keeping in mind societal and automation bias as well.
I love how you pointed out that appropriate risk management isn't optional and that legacy systems are such a challenge. Speaking of that, what was the next session that you attended about and what were your key takeaways?
So one session I found particularly interesting was hosted by Glemser and PharmaLedger, and it explored digital safety and compliance, specifically how AI and blockchain are being used to modernize drug labeling. So pretty much the session demonstrated how structured authoring tools powered by AI can support regulatory compliance while also improving patient outcomes. And one of the key insights was that the shift to electronic product information, or EPI, is more than just a digital convenience. It's about accessibility and allows multilingual support and real-time updates that can benefit patients globally.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned that shift to electronic product information being more than just a digital convenience. The accessibility piece and those real-time updates that can actually benefit patients globally, that really stood out. Moving on to your next session that you attended, tell me more about that one.
So one of the final sessions I attended was especially impactful. The session was led by Shannon Ryan with Medtronic and focused on their case study regarding health equity through the lens of pulse oximetry. So for those not aware, a pulse oximeter is a medical device that estimates the patient's blood oxygen saturation and pulse rate by shining light through the fingertip or earlobe. It's also worth noting that pulse oximeters have been FDA cleared and widely used for decades, often considered the fifth vital sign. However, global conversations are now addressing the limitations of these devices, particularly the overestimation of oxygen saturation in patients with darker skin. So Shannon's presentation addressed racial bias in standard pulse oximeters and discussed the FDA's draft guidance, particularly in response to these concerns about inaccurate readings in individuals with darker skin tones. This really isn't just a technical flaw, it's a health equity issue. So her discussion focused on bridging that gap by developing technologies that can more accurately detect oxygen levels across diverse populations And the new FDA guidance aims to improve clinical performance testing and labeling transparency. She also discussed how Medtronic is working on an open oximetry project that's aimed at improving the safety and precision of these devices. So they're building community partnerships to support study recruitment and ensuring diverse representation across ethnicities and populations. So the FDA is also pushing for more inclusive testing and updated standards. And Medtronic's efforts are really a strong example of how the industry can respond to bias in medical technology. So what really, stood out to me was how it took a global pandemic for us to realize that this small essential medical device, which is used daily in hospitals and doctors' offices, wasn't providing accurate readings for a large portion of the population. And it's a powerful reminder that inclusiveness in design and testing isn't optional. Ensuring compliance is a significant responsibility, and it's not just about following the rules. It's about being a responsible manufacturer and regulatory professional and ensuring that these devices that are being created and brought to market are going to be appropriately used for, globally across the entire population.
I love that. It's crazy to think that something as common as a pulse oximeter ended up sparking such a big conversation about health equity and bias. Now, before we end this episode, were there any other interesting insights you can share with us from RAPS?
So ultimately, for regulatory professionals, our role goes beyond interpreting regulations for our clients. It's about rewriting the narrative of innovation and placing equity at the heart of it. So another session I truly enjoyed focused on bridging the asset access gaps and finding regulatory pathways to equitable innovation. I guess first I should mention that this was the first conference I've attended as a member of the Regulatory Affairs Professional Society, which made it even more meaningful to me. But this session specifically highlighted how regulatory professionals sit at the intersection of science, policy, and patient advocacy. And our role isn't just about ensuring safety and compliance. It's also about championing equitable innovation. So that means creating products and solutions that are fair, meaning they're designed with diverse populations in mind. They also need to be accessible and available to those who need them, regardless of geography or income. Affordability is key. The devices need to be priced to accommodate a wide range of incomes. And lastly, they should be culturally relevant, meaning they're designed with diverse populations in mind, reflecting the values and lived experiences of the end users. So one of the powerful examples of designing devices for the end users that was discussed was for pediatric medical devices. So these simply aren't smaller versions of adult devices. They require unique design considerations, specific testing protocols, and tailored usability standards. So when manufacturers overlook these nuances, children may not receive optimal care. And it's really essential that these devices are developed with the intended user population in mind. I think overall, throughout all of the sessions over the conference, several barriers were discussed, logistical challenges like time, cost, and access to care. Also, cultural barriers, including mistrust in the healthcare system and language differences. And then psychological barriers such as fear and stigma and just overall misunderstanding of medical technologies themselves. So manufacturers and regulators really do need to work together to meet people where they are. That includes community engagement, inclusive clinical trials, and multilingual labeling to ensure instructions for use are understandable across different languages and cultures. So at the heart of it, communication is key. And as regulatory professionals, we can advocate for closing these gaps through, for example, clear patient-friendly labeling, using digital tools like EPI, which we discussed earlier, and community-based education research. So these efforts help ensure that innovation reaches and resonates with the people that it's actually meant to serve. In terms of industry impact and trends, the sessions reflected a broader shift towards accountability, transparency, and patient-centered innovation. So whether that's AI diagnostics or digital labeling, the message really was clear that regulatory frameworks are evolving. And to keep pace with technology, manufacturers do need to work on trying to adapt or they're going to risk falling behind. So, in terms of some of those challenges that were discussed as well, poor data quality, which leads to poor outcomes. So it's critical that data collection reflects a broad range of patients across age, culture, ethnicity, and more. That was kind of reflected a little bit in the discussion, the case study on the pulse oximeters. Um, Cybersecurity was another major concern. So AI systems must be resilient against threats. And that's one of the biggest fears kind of surrounding AI in healthcare right now. So, and finally, global harmonization. That was, kind of a hot topic as well. Aligning standards across markets and countries is complex, but it's so necessary. And these challenges are really shaping how manufacturers design, test, and deploy AI, and they're influencing regulatory strategies worldwide.
Well, thank you so much, Brittany. That wraps up today's episode of Reg with Meg. A huge thank you to you for sharing your insights and takeaways from RAPS in Pittsburgh. If you enjoyed this discussion, be sure to subscribe to Reg with Meg. And to learn about MedEnvoy, visit MedEnvoyGlobal.com. See you next time.